Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Pokemon the first movie, also known as Mewtwo Strikes Back. It was released in 1998 in Japan, 25 years ago, and then released later in the United States by 4Kids in 1999. If you're a kid in the 90s, you probably know this movie inside and out, but for those of you who aren't familiar with Pokemon at all, basically this is the story of, at the time, the most powerful Pokemon ever created, Mewtwo. Cloned from the mystic Pokemon Mew, Mewtwo has been brought into this world by scientists, but questions why he exists, who created him, and what his purpose in the world is. So this movie is essentially about Mewtwo trying to find his place in the world, as the original trio from the anime, Ash, Misty, and Brock, are wrapped up in the middle of it, along with the mystic Pokemon Mew. So this is a surprise right here. When I did my live stream on my plans for 2023 on this channel, I mentioned a couple of retro reviews that I'd be doing, like the Scream sequels, the Transformers Michael Bay movies, but not once did I mention Pokemon the first movie. I'd always wanted to talk about the anime in some form because it had a big impact on my childhood. The franchise overall, but the anime specifically, got me hooked into Pokemon. And this year is actually the best chance I have to review the original movie for 3 reasons. One, Ash's journey is about to come to an end this year, and while it might have been more appropriate to review the entire anime, I have not seen all of it, and that's over 20 years of the animated show that I haven't caught up on. So maybe one day I'll get around to reviewing the entire anime, but it's going to take some time. The second reason is that the original movie was released in Japan 25 years ago, so this is technically the 25th anniversary of Mewtwo Strikes Back. And the third reason will be a reason that I'll save for the end of this review. But anyway, Mewtwo Strikes Back. In 1999, this was a big, monumental event for us Pokemon fans in the 90s. It was pretty much what Transformers the movie was for kids in the 80s. A movie based off a hit TV show that got kids hooked on it. We begged our parents to take us to go and see this movie, and we fell in love with it. It was so exciting to see a Pokemon movie on the big screen. However, as time has gone on, this movie, and when I say this movie, I specifically mean the dubbed version, has not aged well in the slightest. Everything that's been said about the English dub of Mewtwo Strikes Back has been said, so I have really nothing new to offer except my own opinions on it, because there's a lot to criticize with this version that I agree with, but also a few good things throughout that a lot of people who have criticized the English dub completely miss. The biggest controversy with the English dub is how 4Kids pretty much mangled, twisted, and nearly erased the film's original message. The theme of the original Japanese version was basically Mewtwo dealing with existential questions, like why does he exist? What's his purpose in life? Since he was created by scientists in a lab and not born as other Pokemon were, does he share this world? Does he have the right to share this world with others? And the English dub, that message is almost entirely lost when they decide to make Mewtwo a very cliched villain who wants to destroy the world just because he's mad. You have so many cliched lines from Mewtwo like, I will purge this planet of all who oppose me, the world will heed my warning, and the reign of Mewtwo will soon begin. There's, I will extract these Pokemon's DNA for clones to myself, and they will stay on this island with me while my storm destroys the planet. Do not attempt to defy me, this is my world now. It's so stupid. It's unbelievably stupid and cliche. At the end of the day, he is kind of a misunderstood character, but the decision that 4Kids made to pretty much make him 100% evil doesn't really help. And then there's the infamous decision to try to throw in an anti-violence message in a Pokemon movie. That's right, an anti-violence message in a franchise whose entire existence is based around digital cockfighting. And even before I truly understood what 4Kids changed from the Japanese version, this anti-violence message was always so stupid. That being said, having rewatched the English dub prior to this review, there are a few lines of dialogue, mainly from Misty, Brock, and even Meowth, that try to bring in the original message of the Japanese version into the dub version. During the final battle, Misty talks about how they're all living creatures. Meowth has a quick conversation with his copy that's for the dub version only, where he talks about how they share the same world. And then Brock mentions that these Pokemon are willing to fight to the death. So if there's any defense that I can give for the anti-violence message, is that there are a few attempts to try to shed more light into it rather than just simply violence is bad, fighting is wrong. Because the line that Brock gives indicates that these Pokemon are willing to fight to the death. It doesn't matter that they're not using any special abilities. They're going to fight each other until one of them dies, and there's no trainers or referees to stop them and say, that's enough. Again, it's the best I can try to do to sort of see where 4Kids is coming from. But at the end of the day, this message that they force into this version is stupid, considering that the Japanese message is simply, why are they fighting? They are all living creatures regardless of what their origins are. So that's the biggest change and the biggest controversy surrounding Mewtwo Strikes Back when you compare the Japanese version and the English version. There's actually a really great article online, dogasu.bulbapedia.net, where they talk about all the differences between the 4Kids version and the Japanese version of Mewtwo Strikes Back. It goes into complete detail on every single difference and how a lot of these other reviewers have somehow gotten the differences that they've listed wrong. It's the most detailed article of the differences between the two versions, and I'm going to leave a link for it in the description below. However, in addition to that article, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I would also recommend watching the remake, the CG remake, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution. I'll just briefly sum up my thoughts on this remake. It's pretty much in the same vein as the remakes of Psycho and The Lion King. However, I would say that this is worth watching more than those two because the English dub actually tries to stay closer to the original Japanese version of the original film. It's not 100% accurate, but at least it doesn't depict Mewtwo as some evil supervillain who wants to destroy the world. So I would recommend giving that a chance if you can make it through the awkward CG animation. Now back to the original Mewtwo Strikes Back. Some other things that don't really hold up that well for me is that Ash, Misty, and Brock are actually very underutilized in this movie. There is Ash's big sacrifice in which he doesn't actually die, he's just turned into stone. But outside of that, the trio is just kind of here. They're thrust into this huge event and they don't really get to do much. And that's very disappointing because when it comes to the trio of Ash, Misty, and Brock, I hold them to the same standard as I do Han, Luke, and Leia, or Harry, Ron, and Hermione from Star Wars and Harry Potter respectively. That trio of characters that have always been a huge part of my childhood. And when I see these three together, it just makes me feel warm inside, like, hey, these are some really good friends that I enjoy seeing together. I also don't like the score in the 4Kids version. It just doesn't sound bombastic, it doesn't sound grand or epic, it's just underwhelming a lot of the times. It's a similar problem that I had with the American version of King Kong vs. Godzilla, where the American version of that movie completely erased most of Akira Ifukube's amazing score. The 4Kids version does the criminal act of erasing the beautiful orchestral score that's in the Japanese version. If you have the chance to listen to Shinji Miyazaki's score, you may have heard it throughout the anime, but in the movie it just fits so much better than the score that they made for the English dub. And do not get me started on my brother playing in the big final battle sequence in the 4Kids version. The fact that that terrible song replaced the epic battle music in that sequence makes that scene even worse, on top of the forced and hypocritical anti-violence message. And if I'm allowed to nitpick for a second, as a hardcore Pokemon fan, there are 3 separate instances where they misidentify Pokemon. Pidgeot is mistaken for Pidgeotto, Scyther is mistaken for Alakazam, and Sandslash is mistaken for Sandshrew. Now, I don't know if I can give a 100% pass to mistaking Pidgeot and Sandslash for their pre-evolved forms, but I mean, at least it's in the same line. Alakazam and Scyther look nothing alike. So those are my criticisms with Pokemon the first movie, and I have to elaborate. There are more criticisms of the English dub. I haven't seen the Japanese version with subtitles, so I can't really give a fair review for that version. But that being said, there are some things that I enjoy about this movie, and actually a few elements that people criticize in either version that I have some defenses for. First of all, the animation is absolutely gorgeous. It gives us some epic Pokemon battles. The Pokemon battles that I've always wanted to see from the early days of the anime but never got. The opening title sequence where Ash fights the pirate and Pikachu is able to KO a Golem with Thunderbolt. We'll just leave it at that. The scenes where the starter Pokemon are fighting their copies in the stadium, it's all great stuff. And like I mentioned before, even though the trio's underutilized, just hearing their voices from the original 4Kids cast just takes me back. I always enjoy seeing these characters together, and they work so well together, even if, again, they're underutilized in this movie. Now, there are 2 sequences in this movie that have also been heavily criticized by Pokemon fans and the general audience that I have some defenses for. The first is when Ash is turned into stone. Now, there's nothing to say that Ash was actually killed. That's something that American audiences interpreted, because no one actually says that he died. He just got turned into stone. The sequence where all the Pokemon start crying and their tears pretty much bring Ash back and unstone him. From a writing perspective and an execution perspective, it is a tad goofy and feels like a Deus Ex Machina ending. But if you believe in the idea that Pokemon are magical creatures, then this actually checks out. I feel like one of the main reasons that Pokemon has endured for almost 30 years is because we want these creatures to exist. They are so cool, so mythical, that it kills us that they don't exist in real life. And considering that there's well over 1,000 Pokemon with unique backstories, mythical abilities, then why not have the tears thing actually be part of Pokemon? That if they're magical creatures, why not? This is something that my brother mentioned as we were rewatching this movie not too long ago. And my brother is more of a hardcore Pokemon fan than I am, so I just thought, yeah, that's a good way to look at this sequence. Again, those that see it as Deus Ex Machina are not wrong, but I feel like there's a legit reasoning that you can apply to it to make it make more sense. And then in terms of the entire movie having this anti-violence message, having it be resolved, only for Mewtwo to wipe everyone's mind, it's stupid, and makes the anti-violence message even worse. But considering that every Pokemon movie going forward has pretty much existed in a different continuity than the actual show, I think retroactively this criticism doesn't work anymore. Because Mewtwo Strikes Back is the only movie that we know exists in the continuity of the show. You could make an argument for Pokemon 2000 based off a line that Ash utters in his Johto journeys where he first met Lugia in the Orange Islands, but there is definitive proof throughout that Mewtwo Strikes Back exists in the same timeline as the anime. The crossover episodes in the Indigo League season, the TV special Mewtwo Returns. So this movie is the only one that actually exists with the rest of the show. And because of that, the memory wiping sequence is not really a fair criticism in hindsight. I feel like I've been rambling a lot throughout this review. So what do I think about it looking at it 25 years later? Do I like this movie? Do I not like the movie? it's really complicated because the 4Kids version is just a flat out mess, but I have fond memories of it. It's a theater experience that I won't forget, and even though I don't like to fall back on nostalgia as a reason for defending a movie, this was an important part of my childhood. So I can't flat out hate the American version, but I'm not nostalgia blinded enough to say it's a good movie. I'll say watch at your own risk. There are things to enjoy about it, maybe in a so bad it's good quality, but if you're able to find a copy of the Japanese version with subtitles, or if you're willing to put up with the awkward CG animation in the remake, then I think that's the better option to go with, because it's a lot more interesting and in ways kind of more thought-provoking than the 4Kids dub. But as for the 4Kids dub exclusively, it doesn't hold up very well, but I have fond memories of it regardless. And if you were a kid of the 90s and saw Pokemon the first movie in theaters, you were also treated to a short that played beforehand, Pikachu's Vacation, which is cute. I mean, it's clearly made for a much younger audience, and watching this as a 32-year-old man, there's only so much I can take of Pika, Pikachu, Squirtle, 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 Bulbasaur, Psyduck. So it's not horrible. It's not offensive in any way, but yeah, this is not something that I would plan to revisit anytime soon unless I have kids of my own. So if I were to rate Pikachu's Vacation, I'd give it the same rating. Just watch at your own risk. You can laugh at some parts of it, and it is admittedly cute, but it's not all that great unless you were a really, really young kid. And there you go, that's my review for Pokemon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. Now, I did say that I wanted to review this movie because it was the 25th anniversary, but I also know that there's a ton more Pokemon movies out there that I could review as well. The problem is, I don't have time to review over 10 movies. So here's the deal. I'm not going to just end on this review here. I'm going to review a couple more Pokemon movies, but only the ones that were released in US theaters. And that pretty much consists of Pokemon 2000, Pokemon 3, Pokemon Forever, and Pokemon Heroes, with the review for Pokemon Heroes coming out the same day as the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So that's the third reason I'd plan to review these first 5 Pokemon movies, because it coincides with the release of a movie based off another iconic Nintendo property. So we are now full steam ahead into my next series of retro reviews. Next week we'll be talking about Pokemon the Movie 2000. And with the next 4 reviews, I won't go into full depth with them the way I did with Mewtwo Strikes Back. I will only review the next few movies based off the 4Kids dub. But until then, I want to know what you guys think about Mewtwo Strikes Back. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.